Aldon Smith is making the comeback to the NFL. Aldon Smith has signed a one-year contract with the Dallas Cowboys for $4 million. Don't call it a comeback, but Aldon Smith is going to try his very best to get back to where he was as an all-pro pass rusher with the San Francisco 49ers. You may remember him as being one of the young pass rushers in the early 2010s that was dominating the NFL. I mean, this guy was one of the premier pass rushers in the entire league. I'm talking about a player that was an all-pro caliber player, a player that put up multiple back-to-back 10-sack seasons, a player that was the best player on the San Francisco 49ers defense, a defense that went to the Super Bowl, a defense that went to back-to-back NFC championships. I'm talking about Harbaugh's defense, that Aldon Smith. This guy was an absolute monster. He was like the modern day 3-4 edge rusher. He had 19 and a half sacks in 2012. He had 14 sacks in his rookie season in 2011. And all of a sudden, after many seasons, many years have gone by, and he has missed out on playing football in the NFL since 2015. That was the last season he played, the last snap he took, the last time he rushed a quarterback. 2015 with the Oakland Raiders, where he had to leave San Francisco, went to Oakland, still didn't work out for him, just had too much going on in his life, in his personal life, that was derailing him from playing at the highest level in the NFL, and he had to quit, and he had to basically be released from the NFL, and he was not allowed back. All of a sudden, the NFL is allowing Aldon Smith back. Aldon Smith wants to be back, and it looks like Aldon Smith is ready to be back for pro football. The question remains, how good will Aldon Smith be on the field? Really, I have no idea. Now, the Dallas Cowboys may have an idea because they may have some sort of knowledge, some sort of insight if they are going to sign him to a one-year, $4 million deal. Now, that deal is really nothing. I mean, sure, $4 million might be a little bit much for a player that hasn't played in like 5 seasons or whatever, but it doesn't matter, because if he doesn't make the team, he doesn't make the team. If he ends up being a Pro Bowler, he's a Pro Bowler. But nobody's going to go out and sign Aldon Smith, even though he was phenomenal early in his career and is still only 30 years old. You're not going to sign this guy to a multi-year deal. This is basically a tryout contract, and this is to see if he still has it and he's still capable to play in the NFL, because you never really know. I would think that he's still pretty athletic. I would think that he's kept himself in shape, and since he's really said he's going to come back to the NFL, he's probably been working out. He's probably back on the field. He's probably running through drills and all of that. The really interesting thing to me about this move is the fact, with the world as it is right now, the fact that you can't really, every league is basically canceled, suspended. The NFL can't really go through the whole process of doing workouts, seeing these players in person. I am kind of intrigued and interested to hear more details about how the Cowboys went about scouting him. If this was simply just, okay, it's Aldon Smith, we're just going to sign him regardless. We don't really need to see much. We don't need to see a workout. We're just going to sign him, give him an opportunity. Let's see him in training camp, and let's see him healthy in training camp and let him go. You know, maybe it was as simple as that. Maybe it was a little bit more complex than that. Maybe they got a little bit more insight from players or from people around Aldon Smith that kept in contact with the Cowboys. There's a lot that could have happened here, but I'm really intrigued because we know that guys like Cam Newton and also Tua in the draft, these guys that are looking for physicals, looking for workouts, aren't necessarily getting them. And it's kind of derailing their entire process in this offseason. And it's hurt Cam Newton in terms of trade talks, and it hurt Tua. It's going to hurt Tua in terms of the draft, and it's hurt him in terms of his draft stock. So with Aldon Smith, a player that hasn't played in so long, you have to wonder, what that process was like, but that's just me personally. So, a little bit of history on Aldon Smith. Like I said, 22 years old, comes in a league. He terrorizes the NFL. 14 sacks, and he was one of the leading sackers in the league. 23 years old, he becomes an all-pro and instantly one of, if not the premier edge pass rusher in the NFL with 19 and a half sacks. 2013, he plays just 11 games, and he has 8.5 sacks. In these seasons, he's putting up 27, 28, 18 quarterback hits in those short stints with the 49ers. 2014, he's still looked at as a really good player, but he's starting to have some more injury issues, some off-the-field issues, 2 sacks in 7 games, and then we see him with the Raiders, where he's signed by the Raiders, 3.5 sacks in 9 games, and really that's where he left the NFL. He only played from 22 to 26 years old, and from at least the first portion of his career, he was able to keep it all about football and was able to focus on football and be productive in the NFL in at least 2 or 3 seasons. Now, can he come back and be productive? Has he changed as a person? I think that's a lot going into this conversation. Is he going to be able to keep his entire focus on football, on his craft, and be able to get after quarterbacks, essentially? Because if he is, then you're talking about, I feel like, an amazing signing for the Cowboys. And from a need perspective, this signing certainly does fit. It certainly makes sense. The question is, like, Aldon Smith of all people, you know what I mean? Like, he hasn't played in so long. Would you have rather gone with somebody a little bit more proven? Maybe like Adrian Claiborne just signed with the Browns. Was that possibly in the conversation? Somebody more along the lines of an Adrian Claiborne, who maybe doesn't have the ceiling of an Aldon Smith coming back and playing, but he's going to be safe for you and he's going to play the same role as Aldon Smith, but maybe not that ceiling, So it's really intriguing. I think this is maybe the most interesting signing of the entire offseason. And I have not seen many of these type of signings in my life as an NFL fan. Again, he has not played since 2015. It is now going to be the 2020 NFL season. This rarely happens where a player takes this amount of time off of football and then all of a sudden is signed to a contract and comes back. Now, the reasoning here is that he was phenomenal when he played, but also he's still only 30. It's not like he's 35 or 40 years old trying to make a comeback. It's actually realistic to come back to the NFL at only 30 years old, where he could still be at the very least, a backup for this team or a rotation player. And I think when you're looking at the type of role that he'll play, it probably will be early on in the season in a rotation on the edge, probably just as a pass rusher early on. And then as he physically gets back into the game and as he physically looks better, if that's the case, then he might play more snaps as the season wears on. That is the upside here with Aldon Smith in this signing. You're potentially getting a guy that could come back off the street and put up 10 sacks. But you're also potentially signing somebody on a 1-year contract who maybe doesn't even make the team, depending on his commitment to football, depending on if the Cowboys like what they see from this guy that hasn't played in so long. When looking at the edge position for the Cowboys, of course, we knew they had DeMarcus Lawrence on one side, but I brought up the fact that they may have needed to add a proven pass rusher on the opposite side. And I guess this is their answer to that question. Of course, they have Dorrance Armstrong, they have Daniel Ross, Joe Jackson, and these guys are not well-known names opposite DeMarcus Lawrence as depth at the edge position. They did sign McCoy, they signed Poe, they have Antoine Woods, Tristan Hill, Tyron Crawford, all these guys in the interior of their defensive line, and Crawford can play a little bit on the edge as well. But when it comes to getting after quarterbacks from the edge, they needed that veteran pass rusher, I felt, to add some depth. And they could potentially even look to the draft to add a younger guy at this position as well. But Aldon Smith could potentially give that, and he could potentially give what they had in Robert Quinn. You know, a guy that wasn't necessarily productive for a few seasons, but was really good in certain aspects in his career, and all of a sudden turns his career around and puts up big numbers and then goes after a bigger contract next year. That could happen. The difference between Smith and Quinn is that one didn't play for a number of seasons, but their seasons in their careers are actually very similar. Quinn was amazing early in his career, dropped off, and then went back up. And Aldon Smith, you could see the same thing. Just because he didn't play and he comes back on the field, it could be the same result that you're looking for in a Robert Quinn-like prospect in Aldon Smith. So I'm happy for Aldon Smith. Hopefully he is healthy, he's ready to go, and he's ready to kick ass. I'm excited to see him play. I'm excited to see what he can do on the field, and I'm excited to see if he can put up the sack numbers that he once did. I'm not counting on it, but I'm cheering for him. Let me know in the comment section below if you guys like this signing. Overall, I think it's a nice signing. There's really no risk in this signing, and there's a ton of upside. So Aldon Smith signs with the Dallas Cowboys and is back in the NFL.